So good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us tonight. On behalf of Harif, I am Lynn Julius, and I am ably assisted by our technical whiz, Lawrence. The subject of tonight's lecture is Tunisian Jews under Nazi rule. This is just one of a series of Zooms that we've been running more or less since the beginning of the pandemic. Our organization, Harif, has the objective of raising awareness of the education, of the heritage and history of Jews from the Middle East and North Africa. We have a website, www.harif.org. We also have a news blog called Point of No Return, which you can access by going to the Harif website and clicking on news. This session is being recorded, and there will be an opportunity to make comments or ask questions. Just use the chat function at the bottom of your screen, and make sure you use your real name and not iPhone or iPad. So on to tonight's subject. We've been concentrating on what happened during World War II this month because it's 80 years since the end of the war. And so we are focusing tonight on Tunisian Jews under Nazi rule. As many of you know, for 7 months during World War II, the Jewish community of Tunisia, which numbered about 100,000 people, came under direct Nazi rule. And this lasted for about 6 or 7 months. They were already under the Vichy regime since 1940, and they had been subject to anti-Jewish Vichy laws, and now they were being exposed to German SS officers led by Walter Rauff, the Einsatzgruppen commander. So did Germany actually have a policy to exterminate the Jews, and how far did they get, if they did? So we're very happy to welcome tonight an expert on the subject, Shaul Bartal. Shaul has been gathering evidence based on interviews with survivors, contemporary songs by Tunisian Jews, as well as other studies, and some based on Tunisian archival sources. And he's a research associate at the Begin-Sadat Center for Strategic Studies at Ilan University. And he was at the Instituto Oriente at the University of Lisbon. He's written many books and articles about the Israeli-Arab conflict and Tunisian politics. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to you, Shaul, who will tell us about Tunisian Jews under Nazi rule. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present a small part of this history of Jewish in Arab countries. What I'm going to present concerns the history of Tunisian Jews, to whom I have strong emotional and rooted connections, as you already mentioned before. I will share the presentation. First, I hope that everyone is seeing it.
Yes,
And
we can.
you can look at this picture and understand everything. The picture was taken in Tunis and shows German SS soldiers guarding Jews on their way to labor camps. This picture, and this is all the story, could very easily have been taken from other European ghettos in the Second World War. It is not an easy thing to talk about the Tunisian Jewry during the Holocaust. In a certain sense, as a researcher named Leah Brasberg argues, there is a kind of competition here of suffering. In terms of the test of results, Tunisian Jews were not exterminated in the Holocaust, and their lives and the lives of most members of the communities were saved. No extermination camps were established in Tunisia, although there was an attempt to establish them, at least 3 of them. However, the lives of Tunisian Jews during the period of direct German rule were completely similar to the lives of Jews in the early stage of the Holocaust in the other parts of Europe. And I will, what happened during the Vichy government and the direct German occupation from November 1942 to May 1943 was an inseparable part of the European Holocaust. This is what I think, and also some of the researchers. However, Holocaust researchers who have even attempted to deal with the memory of the Holocaust among Tunisian Jews have often tended to diminish and minimize the significance of this memory. Various historians, such as Michel Sirels, have argued, we have forgotten this sad chapter. It has been overshadowed by the tragedy in Europe, but the tragedy in Africa, partly in Tunisia and Libya, is part of the history of the Jews and part of the history of the Holocaust. Andre Caspi, this silence so merely broken the Jews of North Africa if they hadn't also suffered the effect of racial persecution, as if they had been preserved from the hardship of war, in a world as if they had been sheltered from the Shoah. But in the end of the research you write, let us not dramatize excessively. Nothing here compares to what happened in France. It was a period of just a few months. Okay, it's just a few months, but it was the same way and the same stage like it have been in Europe. Michel Aboutboul, one of the first researchers to describe the suffering of North African communities during World War II, also downplayed the effects of the German occupation. Very little similarity to the deadly treatment that European Jews suffered at the time of the final solution. There is also dispute among the various Holocaust researchers as to whether North African Jewry in general and Tunisian Jewry in particular were part of the Nazi final solution or not. It's amazing when you saw the picture. The starting point of my study is that the Jews of Tunisia were indeed included in the Nazi extermination plan, and the entire conduct of the Vichy government from 1940 and the German government until May 1943 are strikingly similar to the first extermination measures carried out in Europe in the beginning of the Second World War. According to Dan Michman, professor of Jewish history and one of the experts of the Holocaust of European Jews, North African Jewry was not part of the final solution. It was officially published in Yad Vashem book. Even for Tunisian Jewry, this is what he said, suffered significantly from the Nazi policy as part of the world Jewry that Hitler declared war on. In a recent article, Matthew Polker also agrees with Michman that the final solution was only for European Jewry. It's not for, if you want, it's not for the black Jews or as the North African Jews. I conclude this is what he writes. I conclude there was no wartime Nazi program or policy for the extermination of non-European Jews, or some kind of imminent plan to do so. That policy, as it existed during the World War II, was objectively circumscribed to Europe. So only if you're European Jew, you probably will be dead. But if you are North African Jew, according to some researchers, and this is something that I found in all the academy, in all Holocaust research that was published in the last years. However, he agrees that the Nazis did have a general desire to destroy all the world's Jewry, and cites Joseph Goebbels. As Goebbels wrote, Jews were to be exterminated in Europe and possibly in the entire world. Those studies ignore the fact that the destruction of European Jewry didn't begin in one moment, but rather was carried out through a gradual process of separating the Jewish population from the local population, and this is already have been in Tunisia. This includes marking and separating the Jewish population from its surrounding, convincing the local population and the local leadership to cooperate with the process of supporting the Jews and presenting them as foreigners. The Jews from Tunisia, everyone know the history, living there from the first century BC, if I remember right. Next come the establishment of labor camps and limited cooperation with the local Jewish leadership, or a Jewish Judenrat, if you want, until the creation of the extermination camp designed to carry out the final stage, the final solution. All the entire steps were indeed carried out in Tunisia, but also in many European countries, including Lithuania, Hungary, Romania, Ukraine, and more. Other scholars also ignored the uniqueness of the German occupation of Tunisia, and the suffering of the Jews at that time was considered part of the price of the war, even if it was greater than that of their Arab neighbors. To this belong most of the studies dealing with the file that were mostly published until the 90s. In the last years, many other scholars don't agree with Michman's position, including me, of course. Grad Weinberg broadly described Hitler's war as a war against world Jewry. Therefore, in his opinion, Hitler has a systematic plan to destroy all the Jews in the world, including those of the Middle East, and especially the Jews in mandatory Palestine, as he personally committed to the Mufti Haj Muhammad Amin al-Husseini. German researchers, you understand Germany, I think, Klaus Mitchell Mellman and Martin Coopers revealed the existence of a special unit Einsatzgruppen Egyptian led by Walter Rauff that was designed for this purpose. Even at Yad Vashem, a research revival began in the last 20 years discussing the history of Tunisian and Libyan Jewry during the Holocaust, which was reflected in the publication of the Community Register for Libya and Tunisia. Jewry, it's called Pinkasa Keilot Leuven Tunisia. You could see the picture of the book. Encyclopedia of Jewish communities from their foundation until and after the Holocaust, Libya and Tunisia, similar to other community registered in European Jewish communities. After all, even if it was a short period, Tunisian Jews wore a yellow patch and faced the Nazis, as you could see in the picture. I am not a Holocaust researcher by training, as Lynn already described, but one of the things that has struck me over and over again when I have visited Holocaust museums around the world is the almost complete disregard for the plight of the Jews of North Africa and Tunisian in particular. No pictures. You could see there are. No documentations. I hope that the research I have written and that I hope it will be published soon will help somewhat to show the history of another Jewish community that was a victim of the Nazi but managed to survive the war. After the war in Tunisia, around 1944, two of the community leaders decided to publish what had happened. They were Robert Bourgel and Paul Gez. Robert is the son of Moish Bourgel, who led the community during the difficult time. Robert Bourgel's book was called Yellow Star and Sawastaka. The
Swastika.
book was Sawastika. The book was originally written in France, and it is called Itoué Genou et Croix Jamais. I hope I
Et toi
denounced it
jaune et croix
correctly.
gammée.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The author is full of photos and described what happened in Tunisia as part of the German World War against the Jews. The book is not an easy read, but it is rich in details. Unfortunately, the book has not been translated into English or Hebrew or Arabic, of course not, the language that I spoke. A new edition was published in 2007. Robert Bourgil was from the Bourgil family that everyone knows from the Tunisia, and that led the Jewish Tunisia, the Jewish Tawanse, as we called it in Tunisia, Tawanse. Paul Gates, a lawyer, was also one of the community leaders who spoke and dealt directly with the Germans. His book, titled 6 Months Under the Boot, The Jews of Tunis Grapple with the SS, in Si le Boot. The book was also published in Tunis in 1944. I have to say that I didn't find, usually in the research that wrote about Tunisian Jewry, I hardly find any mention of those books. Paul Gates was a hero of World War I, a French citizen. He got citizenship, French citizenship. However, during the war, he served as the de facto chairman of the Jewish Judenrat in Tunis. He was responsible for sending Jews to labor camps, recruiting them, and trying to make sure they were paid. Many accuse him and the leadership of the community committee he headed of sending the lower classes to forced labor, many whom never returned. Getz and Bourgel know well what was happening with the other Jewish communities throughout Europe. They write it in their books that they know that what we are suffering, it's also in Poland, it's also in Hungary, it's also in other parts. So they really know and appreciate, and they try to find more, to get more time to save the community. They tried, as I called it, they tried to buy time, and in their case, they succeeded. Now, after all this introduction, we will begin to talk about a little about Tunisian Jewry and explain how the persecution of the Jews began. For hundreds of years, Jews lived in Arab countries within a prosperous community. At the end of the 15th and the 16th century, after the expulsion of the Jews from Spain and Portugal, from the Iberian Peninsula, many Jews fled to North Africa and the rest to the Ottoman Empire when they could practice their religion. However, even in Arab countries, Jews sometimes suffered persecution. It wasn't like heaven, as some people described it, on the basis of their religion, despite the fact that the Jews were well integrated into the commercial life of Tunisia and had contributed to the economy for hundreds of years. The life as postage or dhimmi under Ottoman rule was sometimes very difficult and full of suffering. In 1806, a Belgian-born doctor, Louis Frank, described the lives of the Jews in Tunis and the effect of their dhimmi status, referring to the state's obligation under Sharia to protect the individual's life, property, as well as freedom of religion in exchange of loyalty to the state and payment of the jizya tax. Their Jews were were the only subjects of the Bey. The Beys was the ruling, the Shalit, or the king, or if you want, a kind of sultan of Tunis, and they who paid him a personal tax and suffer a constant humiliation. From the 7th century until the France conquered in 1881, Tunisia was under Islamic rule. The French protectorate that began in 1881 brought many development and sped up of the westernization of Tunisia. It ended in March 20, 1956, with Tunisia received its independence. On the eve of World War II, there were between, and this is important, between 85,000 till 100,000 Jews living in Tunisia. Nobody really tell me exactly the sum of Tunisia because there are different sums in some research, comparing more or less 2.7% from the country population. Today, there are only 1,500 Jews still living in Tunisia. Unlike the rest of the Jewish communities in North Africa, the Jews of Tunisia were centered in only a few areas, with more than half of them residing in Tunis, the capital city. The modernization of the Jews in Tunisia under French rule was more comprehensive and deeper than that of the other Jewish communities in North Africa, maybe not like those of Algeria, but it was really they were really influenced from French civilization. Tunisian Jews were doctors, lawyers, merchants, and other free professions. Jewish intellectuals from the ideological association, Zionists, socialists, and communists took part in the political debts of the day. Zionist association abounded. They bore names such as Sons of Zion, Bnei Zion, the love of Zion, Ahavat Zion, and etc. The number of socialist and communities grew with the arrival of anti-fascists who escaped Italy and in fascist ruler Benito Mussolini. In southern Tunisia, Jerba, and all the area of Gabes and Jerba and Ben Gardan and Jarjish, Tunisian, the population was more traditional, working in professions such as tailoring, goldsmithing, and fishing. My grandfather was a tailor there. For 2 years, beginning in October 1940, from the beginning of the Vichy government until the end of the German occupation of Tunisia in May 1943, the Jews of Tunisia lived under the new anti-Semitic regulation negated by the Vichy administration against French Jews and the Jews in French colonies in North Africa. As you could see, the persecution of the Jews during World War II can be divided into two main periods. The first one is between October 1940 till November 1942. It's the Vichy government rule. This period was characterized by strict anti-Jewish regulation, plus riots that broke out from time to time in different regions against the Jewish communities. The French authorities tried to limit the damage to the Jews, despite orders to the contrary from the French commissioner sent to the local German representative. So it was like on and off like this. And then the second period, it's from November 9, 1942, till May 1943. A direct German occupation. This period was characterized by riots, pogroms, and unprecedented looting of Jewish property by the German and Arab Tunisians. Jean-Pierre Esteve died in 1951, also was sentenced because of his as a war crime, was appointed the new French commissioner of the Vichy government on June 15, 1940. His policy was to implement the anti-Jewish Tunisian restriction to local front's policy against the Jews, which he interpreted it as a pro-Jewish. Therefore, implementation of the anti-Semitic restriction in Tunisia was very slow. It wasn't so, I have to say that it wasn't so much anti-Semitic, but he did his job well. Esteva was often pushed into implementing the regulation due to the pressure from the Office of Jewish Affairs in France and Populaire Française, an anti-Semitic branch of the French Nationalist Party in Tunisia, under the leadership of Jacques Douriet. I hope I mentioned his name right, and the Arab nationalist. According to the document in Tunisia archives, the France officials blamed the Jewish for France's defeat, for the misery of their Arab compatriots, for wartime shortage, for their resurgence of their appetite for usury and quick enrichment, and consequently for any unrest in Tunisia. Most Muslims, according to various studies, tended to identify the Jews with French colonialism and therefore hated them equally. Professor Mohsen Hamli is a Tunisian professor teaching in Tunisian University who conducted the research in the Tunisian archives, claimed that according to his research, all public authorities in Tunisia were tainted with anti-Semitic towards Jews and collaborated with the Nazis and with anti-Jewish measures. On November 30, 1940, the Jewish Statute or Statut de Juif was signed and approved by Ahmed II, Ahmed Bey. The Bey's signature on the order was only formality, since according to Tunisian law, the leader of Tunis was the top commissioner of the pro-Nazi Vichy government. The Jewish statute that went into effect a month earlier in France included a protectorates including Syria, Lebanon, Algeria, and Morocco. Its purpose was to ban the Jewish from involvement in commerce, culture, and economy of the country. The process began, as you could see. It's amazing. You could take this timeline or this schedule to put it in every European country that the Nazi act, and it was quite the same. Change the dates a little, and it will be the same thing like every other European country. The attitude of the Arab Muslim population was influenced by Hajj Muhammad Amin al-Husseini propaganda, which called for jihad against the Allies and openly preached that killing the Jews everywhere in Islamic nation was a religious commitment. Before the arrival of the Nazis, there were a series of anti-Semitic clashes and pogroms against Jews. In Tunis, in April 28, 1940, Al-Qaf, Eba Esort, today Damani, and Tala in August 8, 1940. Maktar and Selina in August 8, 1940. Lagash in November 1940. Raps in January 1941. In Gabes in May 20, 1941. German scholar Matthias Kanzel described German propaganda during World War II as leading to turning point in relations between Jews and Arab in all of the Middle East and the formation of Islamic anti-Semitism influenced by Nazism. According to all the testimonies of Tunisian Jewish and experts, this propaganda was well heard all over Tunisia. As a result of this broadcast, Hitler became a revealed figure in the Arab world, and many newborn children were named Hitler and Mussolini. Hitler won the nickname Abu Ali for his bravery, um, a deity that expressed the atmosphere of the French Mandat went as follows: no more Monsieur, no more Mr. In heaven Allah, on earth Hitler. But the name Abu Ali, it's also something that Muslims like to describe Hitler like this. Also in Arabic tradition, when you say someone Abu Ali, it means that he is very strong. In the slang, he's very strong and he's very, very brave. In Gabes, groups of militants from the Neo-Dastur party incited the masses who called out mottos such as "Long live Hitler," "Long live Mussolini," and etc. At dusk on May 20, 1941, a crowd of Arabs armed with clubs and knives carried out a massacre of Jews in the Garana Branya, in the Jewish quarter. The outcome was 8 fatalities, 8 people died, and 20 injured. As a result of this horrible murder, a lament was written whose choice was, "My rock, my God, listen and quickly repay our neighbors sevenfold." The description of the massacre are shocking. Yosef Hori, one of the survivors, described how his neighbor Afila Rakah was murdered in her kitchen as she prepared dinner for her family. Many years later, an additional survivor, Tzvi Haddad, told how his mother was almost murdered in front of his eyes when she went outside to look for his sister. 3 fathers arrived to rescue his wife, who miraculously survived. She carried a scar on her throat for the rest of her life. In order to maintain control, the local Tunisian police ended the raids against the Jews. Admiral Estevar wrote a letter to France saying the following: "The presence of German soldiers in Gabs has, without doubt, even without intervention of their part, led the Arab believe they will be protected in the case of riots." In other words, the German also influenced and encouraged riots and pogroms against Jews all over Tunisia. Operation Torch. On the heels of the Allied landing in Operation Torch, the rapid capture of Tunisia was the salient goal, but the Axis, German, got there first. I am not going to elaborate all the entire course of the war, but in Operation Torch, the Allies managed to liberate Morocco and Algeria and push the German army from the Egyptian borders to Tunisia. The German army, if you could see, ran away from Morocco, from Algeria to Tunisia, and also from the Egyptian border to Tunisia. It means that all the German army of North Africa was focused in Tunisia to save Tunisia, and for starting maybe to have it continue fighting from Tunisia and reconquered all the North Africa again. The German army managed to overcome the British and Americans, who had a divided command during that war, and establish itself more quickly in Tunisia. The calculation of the Nazi war headquarters was that Tunisia, with its good access to the Mediterranean Sea, as you could see, would be a base from which they would be able to reconquer all of North Africa and remove the British military retreat from Europe. In other words, the Nazi occupied Tunisia in order to remain there even after the war, given the importance they attached to its location. From November 1942, the Jews of Tunisia were subject to the whims of the German SS officers led by Walter Rauff. You could see him in the middle of the picture. The commander of the local Einsatzgruppen, parliamentary death squad, if you want, of Nazi Germany, attached to the Germany African Corps. Raoult, the German African Corps was headed at first by Rommel. Rauff, appointed by General Walter Nering, who commanded the African Corps, was involved in the installation of the first gas track chambers in Russia and served as the commander of the Southern German Command, which carried out Germany's policy for the Jews. He was responsible for the death of over 90,000 Jews in Eastern Europe. Approximately 5,000 Tunisian Jews were sent to labor camps according to his orders, and many died during this period. As you could see, the Germans pretend that if the Jews didn't end up in forced labor, he would execute hostage he had taken from the community. At least 250 Tunisian Jews were murdered in Auschwitz. Among them, 40 Tunisian Jews resistance fighters, as we could call them. Acts of violence against the Jewish population included massacres that took place in Dagash in 1940 and in Gabs in 1941. You can see here the call and the order for conscription for forced labor. As I said before, one of the allegations against the Jewish leadership was that it preferred to send the poor and the poorest person from the community to the forced labor camps, even though they know there was a very high chance that they would die in the camps from the Allied bombing that bombed Tunisia almost daily, or by the Germans. According to memories of Robert Bourgil, Raouf told him that if the people he wanted were not brought to the labor camps, the German will forcibly conscript 20,000 Jews. In the end, only 5,000 Jews were sent to forced labor. There is no doubt that the other Germans remained in Tunisia as they planned. A while longer, the fate of this ancient community of Jews would have been the same as the fate of other European Jewish community. The Arabs of Tunisia collaborated with the Germans. They ridiculed the Jews and enjoyed watching them suffer. They helped the Germans carry out their anti-Jewish campaign in North Africa, looting the Jewish property, rape, murder, and informing on the to the Germans and the local France police were commonplace events. In 1933, the Neo-Dastur party led by Habib Bourguiba was established, despite Bourguiba himself having an imperial attitude to the Jewish community in Tunisia. His party took an anti-Jewish approach, or even anti-Semitic approach, as of the enactment of the Nuremberg race laws in 1935. The Italians and later the Germans began broadcasting measures of incitement against world Jewry and the Allies. There were 8 radio stations broadcasting in the Maghreb. The most prominent radio station was in Bari station, which broadcast from southern Italy. In addition to the spreading of fascist Nazi propaganda in the Middle East, the Italian radio station, in collaboration with Mufti al-Husseini, displayed and the aspiration of the Jews in Palestine, published Nazi race theory, and emphasized that the Jews were an inferior breed. They also supported the Great Arab Revolt and that broke in Palestine in 1936, 1939, and etc. There is also testimony that the Arabs from the area surrounding Nablus were happy when they saw the Jewish suffering. They used to sing إدرايا بالا يشالو وشبات عليك مشهوم. In Arabic, hit the shalom, meaning a Jew, with the hoe, and a course, Shabbat to you. This is the translation. Arabs in the area of Nebel informed on the Jewish to the Germans regarding Jewish property and looted house and synagogues. Arabs all over Tunisia denounced their Jewish neighbors. Avraham Makaspi from Bizerte said it was enough that an Arab said a Jew and then a German would chase him. That is what happened to my cousin. His cousin Gilbert was murdered at the age of 12 in Bizerte. The German also purposely incited the Arab population against the Jews. Detailed instructions on how to do this were sent to Rauff from Berlin. I can't help but to refer to the testimony of my grandmother, Mazal Madar, who passed away several years ago. In a recorded testimony she gave me about 5 years before his death, she told how she remembers their Arab neighbors in Djerba, accompanied by German Gestapo agents, and going door to door with the Jews to take the Jewish gold that they have in Djerba. From German reports, at the time it appears that it was difficult for Germans to distinguish between the Arabs and Jews who lived there since they spoke the same language, they spoke Arabic, and they looked the same like the Arabs. So it was difficult for Germans in their letters what they send to difference between Jews and Arabs, and they need someone to collaborate with them to tell them. Therefore, the Germans really depended on cooperation with the local Arabs, and most of them were very happy to help them. In Arabic, we call them jasus for one, or jawasis. It means collaborators in Arabic. My grandmother didn't know English or French, but she spoke Arabic until the day she died. In 2012, I took her to the claims community, and there she told the story about the Gestapo. They say that the Gestapo come also with the Arab and some Arabs that helped the Gestapo, and described the entire German occupation of southern Tunisia from the point of view of a 12 years old daughter, a girl. She was recognized as a Holocaust survivor only in 2013. 4 years later, she died. Adolf Hitler's basic belief was that Jews were a danger to all of mankind, not just to the Germans, and one should not consider them humans. The Jews were parasites, and only with their total annihilation could one bring redemption to humanity. That is why, in the planning of the destruction of the Jews in Europe, as reflected in the protocol of the Wannsee Conference, the Nazis also included the Jews of North Africa who were under Vichy rule, in addition to the Jews of France, who were a part of the 11 million Jews designed for destruction, for annihilation, or whatever. The division was, as you could see, France in the capital territory, it's 165,000 Jews. France under the Vichy government, it's 700,000 Jews. This is also include the Jews of Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia. There are some researchers, like I already mentioned before, like Dan Michman mentioned earlier, who claim that the data is incorrect regarding North African Jews, and therefore there is really no proof that North African Jews were included in the map of the extermination of the Jews presented at the Wannsee Conference. This is indeed a disagreement that existed among Holocaust researchers. I think that the Germans, unlike European countries, where the numbers of Jews were indicated, even if there were only a few dozens. In North Africa, the number of Jews was indeed a rough estimate of their numbers, since there was no reliable census available that could be based on it. This controversy is relevant mainly due to the research question of whether North African Jews, and especially Tunisian Jews, were included in the Nazis' final solution plan. Of course, I think they were. The Jews described their suffering in pottery published in popular publication, usually in their Judeo-Arabic dialect, alongside transliteration in Latin letters. Back in the 1930s, after Adolf Hitler was into power, three such compositions were already printed. The first lament, um, the first lament that as 8 page long is Kinat Adab اليهود من ألمانيا كنا بالقافية والتفنيم. A lament of Jewish suffering in Germany, a lament written in rhyme with flowery verse. The author of the lament is Shimon de Yaakov Cohen. We will mention him again. The lament described in first person the suffering of the Jews in Germany, as if the author himself underwent the misery and is lamenting his bitter destiny. The author tells how kosher Jewish slaughtering was forbidden, how the children were expelled from school, how guards were set up in front of stores to prevent customers from entering them, and how many were banished from their jobs, including doctors and lawyers, and always subjected to hunger and deprivation. Their passports were confiscated, and they were required to disperse to there from the streets. You could read, the whole world has been destroyed as the news come from Germany. It means that Tunisians know exactly what happened in Germany. The heart of the Jewish nation has been hurt by Hitler, territory's enemy. After they succeeded in becoming free and important among nations, great trouble arrived. They were fired from the job in the city, doctors, siren, and everything. It was like uh, interesting and also amazing. Uh, on Friday, May 7, 1943, the last German force left Tunisia. The Jews marked the occasion by singing and dancing with songs that have been written expressly for event which express their joy and their life. Seeing the Allies forces. One of the songs is called Hmus Jana, and I have to tell, Hmus Jana was وجا بحضنا. Hmus Jana was underground song. The word Hmus, why they use the word Hmus? Because Hmus is like Hamsa. We also, the Tunisian, in the Tunisian Arabic, you sometimes do Hamsa Alek. So we don't want Enara, the devil that will, and we want to help them. We want they will succeed, and they use the word Hmus. Nobody knows Hmus. It's also a name for Tunisian Jews. I know people that older people that that have this name. So they use the Hmus Dana. The Tunisian Jews nickname as it's come. This was interesting that the name Hmus is for Allied. It was to mention the Allies. Simon de Yaakov Cohen, mentioned above, is the author of Hmus Jana. This poem was printed in Tunisia and 5,200 copies were distributed. The date of publication is not noted, but according to Avram Eitel, it was published around 1944 or 1945. The text of the poem, Hmus Jana, حمص come and remove Germany from our lives. حمص جانا انحرج ألمانيا من بحرنا. This long poem brought here in, I could want to show you. Maybe I stop sharing. I want to share something else. Yeah. Look, this is the original. You could get it also. You could see that it was printed in Tunis. The author is Shimon de Yaakov Cohen. حمص جانا وحرج ألمان من بحرنا. نروى الشبات وحدينا فجعات تونس اتملأت بعسكر الألمان فرات عسكرو وعلاك تسكرو. It's very amazing song, I have to say. There are some sentences that you could understand, even if you don't understand the Arabic well, you could understand. For instance, there is something that for me it was really funny to write it. This is something about food. Jabal Farina, after the allies come to Tunis. Jabal Frena, وفرك علينا شوكولاتة بنينا. If someone know what is banina. وحنفيت عتانا. برلين محروبة من ضرب بومبا. الألمان معروبة. حفايا وأغانا. It means that Berlin was destroyed, everything, because of the bombs. German, Alman, destroyed. Hafaya without anything and without money, without very poor. And in the end, Roosevelt, دعوة العين, وتشرشل الحنين, De Gaulle was Stalin, Ansarum Yamulana, God will save them, all the allies. Roosevelt, Churchill, De Gaulle, Stalin, without any difference between communist and capitalist. It wasn't the time of the Cold War, as you could understand. They thanks for their lives. And now we could see also this one. Yeah, you could see how it start. They were down our names. There are suffering. This is the translation. Then the suffering and torture began. The guys, this is from the song. Everyone. We sat in the houses, singers and married, children and babies on the ground. The men and women sat, carrying with tears, the tears smelling like a candle on fire. Hamus, the Allies Liberation Army reached us, and then all the happiness. And all of her friends are together. No evil will befall us, and God gave us freedom. Her stars, America is great. We rejoice, we and our children, for release. Roosevelt, the president of the US, of course, light is in to our eyes. Dawel N, lights in our eyes. And Churchill, the merciful, and Gaulle, and Stalin, God watch over them. It's a very long song, I have to say. Also, you could manage in the song. They also describe, of course, that the food that they get. Frena, if nobody know, it's the tabun. It's a kind of tabun that using banania. It's a popular chocolate drink most widely distributed in France. Hanfit, special Tunisian meatballs. This is what they eat for the party, for the synagogue. Sphinge, it's also managed in the song. I think everyone know what is sphinge. I hope so.
The kind of donut, a
Yeah, it's a
donut that,
very, very tasty food.
especially for Hanukkah.
Yeah, especially for Hanukkah, and they put it on May, not in December.
Yeah.
So it wasn't Hanukkah for them, it was happy the same. Um,
Yeah.
it's very, very interesting. And in October 1943, if we want to conclude, when the Allies reconquered Northern Africa, Tunisia was the last state to be recaptured. The Germans turned it into a fortress, and fighting continued there for almost 7 months. Alongside the war efforts, the Germans in Tunisia began implementing the final solution to the Jewish problem in the spirit of the Nazi race theory as expressed in Europe. The Tunisian Jewish community suffered directly under the racist laws of the French Vichy government that fully collaborated with the Germans by advancing anti-Semitic policy in both France and North Africa. Jewish Tunisians who were in France during the war were sent to extermination camps like Auschwitz. They found their death. You could see some of them in this slide. The Tunisian Jews participated in the Allies' war effort and in the foundation campaigns, which took place during the first year of the war until the fall of France in September 1930 till July 1940. Once Germany occupied Tunisia in November 1942, the Germans had an opportunity to begin implementing the final solution to the Jewish question in North Africa. According to the Wannsee Conference, this was the program which counted the Jewish of North Africa as France Jews. There are some also testimony of evidence in Arabic that say that the Nazis already began to build um, camps like Auschwitz in three places in Tunisia. One, it was close to Q1, another in the south, and also another, and the third one was close to Tunis. And if you think about Tunisia, Tunisia could be, according to the Nazi plan, could be the center, like was Poland, to annihilate all the Jews of North Africa, if the Nazi plan was successful. Approximately 5,000 Jews were sent to labor camps where they endured poor, hygienic conditions, cruelty, and non-stop shelling by the Allies. Reports list 5,075 Tunisian Jews as dying during the German occupation period only in 7 months. The Nazi vision aspired to turn Tunisia into an area for the destruction of the old North African Front Jewry, which at that time totaled about 30,000 people. The suffering of the Jews of Tunisia was memorialized in a spatial poem of Judeo-Arabic dialect, as you could see, and everyone who wants to read in Arabic the full lament or the full poem of Ahmus Jana could ask it from Lin, which deals with the Holocaust and which praised the Allies who sacrificed their lives in order to beat the Nazis in North Africa. The Judeo-Arabic poem also deals with the terrible famine in Tunisia, the result of World War II, and the suffering and the persecution of the Jewish continued with the outbreak of anger on the part of the Arab population. In this context, one can say that the Holocaust as a life-altering event was a significant cause that, in the end, led to the mass immigration, this is what I believe, of the Jews of Tunisia and brought an end to the community life there, as like the destruction of the Jewish communities elsewhere in the Muslim world. I can't finish without mentioning my grandmother, Mazal Madar, who told me about her life in Tunisia during the Holocaust and after it. Mazal was only 12 years old when Gestapo agents, along with local Arabs, come, and I already told you the story. May she rest in peace. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Shaul, for that fascinating overview of what happened in Tunisia during the war. And I'm sure your grandmother would be very proud of you and of the presentation. Just a few questions I have. You had the list of Holocaust victims. These were people who were taken from France, weren't they? They're Tunisians who were living in France.
Yeah, there are some people that taken from Tunisia directly to France, to Auschwitz. They sent directly, some of them. And also
How
they
many
sent
would, yeah, how many would you say were taken directly from Tunisia?
directly, it's around 200.
200. And they all died?
200 or 250.
Yeah,
And also, there are people that mentioned that they were from France, but originally they were Tunisian who live in France.
yeah.
And they send them in a special trains from France to Auschwitz or to other annihilation camps. It's interesting because when you check about those people, you can understand that those people come from France and not from Tunis.
Mm. Because, well, the Germans wouldn't have differentiated between the Jews of
From
Tunisia.
German, you are a Jew. You could live in Tunis. You could live in Algeria. You could live in France. You're a Jew and you should be dead.
Mhm. Right. And do you have a figure for those who died in the labor camps?
In the labor camps, yes, I mentioned it was not so much as it was around, I think it was more around 3,000 people that died in the labor camps. And
3,000. Wow.
some of them died. It wasn't so much. It wasn't so much. In all, if you take all the Tunisian Jews that died during that period, it will be around more. It will be less than 5,000 people. It's not so much in numbers. But the question is, it's not the numbers is saying. The question is, and this is what I start. The question is, what was really the meaning, what really happened in Tunisia during the Holocaust, and if this was part of a plan that they didn't succeed at it, or was from the beginning, they didn't have any attempt to kill all the Jews of North Africa. This is a
Right.
really big question in research, in Holocaust research.
Yeah, and you say that there are these historians who deny that there was ever a plan to include the Jews of Tunisia in the Holocaust, like
Yeah,
Michman. What is his explanation for the one-say figures then? I mean, why does he deny that the 700,000 Jews of North Africa were actually also going to be part of the extermination by the Nazis?
I could tell you something that Dan Michman write, for instance. He write to the in all the France colonies, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, there were more or less 4,000, 30,000 people living, Jews living.
Mm,
And if you take also another 100 or 150 of in France in Vichy government, it will be around 6,000 people, 600,000 Jews living in all the France area. So we say it's there is a delta of 100,000 Jews that it's not mentioned, and the German were very, very specific in Wannsee conference. They 40, they write it. So how you could explain the delta of 100,000 people? And
mm,
he said that he explain it in a way that the 1,000, it means that they didn't, they put something very big, and they didn't mean that it will be include, that it will include all the Jewish from North Africa. I don't think the theory, this theory is good enough, this explanation.
Mm,
I don't think it's good enough because the German didn't know. This is why what I think. The German didn't know and didn't distinguish between the Jews and the Arabs. And also from their point of view, it's not North Africa wasn't European country. It wasn't a European country that you have a list of everyone according to his religion or things like this. There are a lot of Jews that living in the north, living in village, isolated villages, and it's very hard to go there.
mm,
How much Jews live in Ben Gardan, for instance, or in Jarjish?
mhm.
It's not a very big village. In the south, very isolated from Tunis. How you could manage to how you could number the Jewish in Tunisia, for instance?
Yeah,
You see, even in the numbers that some research gave, it's between 85,000 till 100,000.
yeah. It's a
What is the
big
truth?
difference. Yeah, big difference.
It's
Yeah.
15,000, it's the delta is 15,000 Jews difference.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, that's great. Well, if anyone has any questions or comments, please do write them in the chat. I know we've already got some comments. And incidentally, I didn't mention this before, but this session has been recorded, and we will have it uploaded to the Harif YouTube channel as soon as possible. So just looking at the chat.
Yeah, I'm looking in the chat. I agree with the things that they write. It was Avodat Parech, as one Jonathan write.
Yeah.
It really was Avodat Parech.
Very hard
Uh,
labor, like the Israelites
yeah,
in Egypt.
in the Bizerta,
Avodat
yes,
Peret.
I didn't mention all because Tunis was like the headquarter of of the German headquarter in the North Africa. Tunisia was very important to the German army
Right.
uh, at the
And so
Holocaust.
Danielle says her father was in Bizerte downloading ammunition from German boats. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I don't know exactly the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Berlin.
yeah,
I have to say I didn't visit there, but I visit Yad Vashem and I didn't saw any mention in Yad Vashem, at least in the presentation, about what happened in Tunisia during the Holocaust. And also in the Washington, D.C., I visit the Shoah, the Holocaust Museum, and also in New York, there is a kind of Holocaust museum. And
yeah.
fortunately, I didn't see anything about Tunisian Jew.
And is anyone trying to include, is there a movement to change things and make these Holocaust museums memorialize what happened to the Jews in Tunisia?
Uh, yeah, what you said? I read
I said,
something.
sorry, and is there anyone who's trying to change things and make these museums memorialize what happened
I
to
think this
the
is something
Tunisian
that it
Jews?
should come from the public. I send an
Mm,
email a nice email to the museums and ask them the questions. I could say that the museums in Washington, D.C. and New York told me that they doing directly from what happening they get instructions also from Yad Vashem. I could tell you that I discussed with this in Yad Vashem, and they explained that there's something that's more shocking what happening in Europe, and this is
mm,
something that I started with. Um, in Europe, of course, what happened in Europe, it's very tragedy, and every word you will describe it, will be out of limit. We
mm,
can't describe what happened in Europe.
Yeah.
And of course, everything that's happening there, I think that they want to be more focused. This is what they said, more focused about what happening in Europe to describe the way the German think, the Nazis propaganda and everything. But they still also in Yad Vashem, they still also publish things about Tunisian Jews and Tunisia and Libya, as you could
Yeah.
see in Pinkas HaKehilot, the
Hmm.
encyclopedia that they published.
Right. Yeah. So that's good. Yeah. Can you give us more details about these extermination camps? You said there were three that were planned.
The
I
three
mean,
was
where do you,
planned and they started build it, but they
yes,
never succeeded to finish it.
right. And are
And
there
this is a
are there traces that you can still see?
no, you could not see. They started to build crematorium in those three places, but
Hmm.
this is only according to Arabic sources.
Right. Yeah. But this is not well known about the crematoria.
I see something about, if not mistaken, these stories of the massacres are from Robert Starleff's book about Jewish in North Africa, I believe. At least some of them, yes. I come also mention in Robert Starleff that he write the book. Uh, he said that people come, Jonathan also say that people died from the Allied bombing, but also
Yeah.
from German. I could, in one of the books, it's called Tunis al-Hudra. This is the books of the guy who write Shimshon Tzorfati. His grandfather was Semach Tzorfati, and he described some people that died. For instance, most of the people was been killed by bombs, but also people were killed by soldiers.
Hmm.
Yosef Saada was killed by Italian soldiers. Uh, Chaim Lalush, Victor, was murdered by the Nazis in Bizerte
Hmm.
in Merz. Um, if you want other, Chaim Chai Gez or Victor was killed by Germans in the camps, in the labor camps.
Hmm.
Of course, there are more and more people that was. Eliyahu Saadon was only 19, was murdered in Bizerte. It's called Utsala Oreg. It means that they killed him in blood.
In cold
Uh,
blood. Cold blood.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Uh, Rabbi Chaim Nataf was also 19 years old, was murdered by the Nazis.
Hmm.
So it's not Lili Amil Hababo also was murdered by the Nazis in Bizerte. So
Hmm.
it's not only by bombs; they also have been died from killing. The Germans killed people in the streets or in the
Hmm.
labor camps, most of them.
Right. And what is the total number for those people who died this way?
As I told from the beginning, the whole number of people that died in Tunisia during that time, if we take all the number, it's 5,000. And
But that
all
includes
the
the,
numbers that
yeah,
people have been in the camps, more or less, it's around 3,000 people.
yeah. But of course, a lot of people died in the bombing, in the Allied bombing.
There is
Um,
a Daniel
yeah.
Ebel want to speak
Yes.
something, so
Yeah. Lawrence, shall we put Danielle on? Right, yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we're just putting her on. And if anyone wants the song, if anyone's interested in the song, just drop me a line at info@harif.org and I'll send you a copy. Okay, here's Danielle.
No,
Hi, Danielle.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Ah, great. I wanted to tell a story. There were a group of professionals, doctors and lawyers who were taken from Tunis to France, and then they were taken to Auschwitz. They were French nationals living in Tunisia. One of them was my father's sister's husband, my paternal auntie's husband, Prosper Masoud Hassid. He was taken, he went there, and in 1945, he came back to Tunis. He was the only survivor of that group. He told his story to groups of youngsters. What he had to do for 3 years was every time a train came into Auschwitz, he had to blow the whistle, and the Jews got undressed. The second whistle, they had to go into the gas chambers. He did that job for 3 long years. When he came back to Tunis, he was broken. He was talking, as I said, to youngsters, and one of those youngsters, a woman who was 15 years old, when she heard him, who told this story to a friend of mine, Victor Hayoun, who actually has gathered all the names of the people who died and who work in neighbor camps, etc. Anyway, so one day in July 46, Prosper Hassid left his home around about lunchtime. It was a Shabbat. And he went in the center of Tunis. There was a station. And he got into the station. A train was going to go to La Marsa, which had been a camp actually also. And the first whistle from the station master, Prosper took off his jacket and his hat. And at the second whistle, he threw himself under the moving train.
Mm. Absolutely tragic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Terrible story. Yeah.
Also, I saw that Veronica write, my mother told us that the Nazis were building a concentration camp, or gas chambers if you want, near Tunis. This is one of the stories that I already get. I told you that they tried to build 3. One was in the north, the second in the middle of Tunisia, and the third was southern area. I think it was close to Gabes, Q1, and Tunis. These are the 3 areas that they started to build, according to Arabic sources. And Veronica, I really, my mother write, as you write you in the chat. Also, Michael Lasseker, another professor of Jewish history, gave testimonies of Jews that also describe that the Nazis built or tried to build gas chambers or construction camps to kill all the Jews of North Africa, or at least those of Tunisia. In the archive of the Holocaust in Washington, D.C., there is a copy of the film Journey from Tunisia, yes, but in the gallery, you don't have anything even mentioned about the Tunisian Jews on what happened in Tunisia. They even went to court to resist recognition, the expertise in the Holocaust, but that the Knesset vote otherwise.
I think they did get reparations, didn't they? The survivors, the Tunisian survivors have been given like a monthly stipend.
Yeah, I told you what happening with my grandmother. It was quite, it take a lot of years till she recognized as a Holocaust survivor.
Yeah.
It wasn't in the beginning, nobody really cared about those stories.
Yeah.
And I think that it also was difficult because most of the Jews that come, most of the time, didn't know, at least if I take, for example, my grandmother, she didn't know Hebrew well, she speak only Arabic. Who care about her?
Very very difficult. I think Jackie Gemach is, have you got him, Lawrence?
Yeah, if there is some.
Yeah.
I asked him to unmute himself and start his video,
Okay.
darling. Please.
Jackie's been asked to unmute himself, but
And start his video.
and start his video, but he hasn't responded.
If there is someone who want also to ask a question, also.
Yeah, and Veronique says it's very difficult and almost impossible to get an exhibition in the Memorial de la Shoah.
Jackie is now joining us.
Okay.
Might be able to hear me?
Yes, Jackie,
Okay.
we can hear you.
First of all, for giving me this chance. I was born in Tunisia in 1940. I have a story that I illustrate many times called the Nutcracker. If you want, you can go to my website and my Wikipedia, you will find it. When I was saved by my grandmother, protecting me from a German officer. And that's where my point is important. The implication of the Nazis was very slow in time. And we had more of the presence of German officers, which were acting differently. Now, that can go into detail. As I said, I don't want to talk too long, but there is one point that I want to make actual. And I have listened our presenter a few times when he was in San Diego at UCSD. He is absolutely correct. But if we want to get to a new world or to an acceptable world of peace and acceptance of each other, a kind of Beyachad Letikun Olam, we have also to recognize what some of the Arabs, like some of the Europeans, have done to save the life of the Jews. And we had righteous Jews at Yad Vashem listed in their long table of names. That means I think, yes, we were hurt. Yes, we were scared. Yes, we were killed. And one person killed is the end of the world. One person we save is the beginning of the world. And I will tell you, I am an educator for 63 years. I am combating education with well-being, that to improve our feelings, to improve our acts. And I think we got to a day where together, we can do a tikkun olam. We can try to save the world.
Jackie, do you have
another
names?
point? Just
Sorry. Okay.
Another point very fast.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to talk, but I'm coherent with my accent and everything. It's a personal point. I was born in Tunisia. I was drama for my family because I was a tomboy until the age of 14. At the age of 14, I couldn't read, I couldn't talk, I couldn't speak, I couldn't listen, nothing. I was really impossible. Expelled of all the schools of Tunis. I am today 84. Expelled from the course, but finally entered the Alliance Israelite Universelle. And the first 5 minutes of my presence on this bench, and I hope you all know about the Alliance Israelite Universelle, the teacher, Madame Saban, tells me, si tu veux, tu peux.
Yeah.
If you want, you can.
You can do it. Yeah.
My experience recently is, and handicapped kids at 14 years old, I presented at the American Jewish University my life under the title of From Exodus to Embrace.
Right. Yes. No, I'm sure you've done a lot of very, very good work, Jackie. I was just interested in your point about Arabs who saved Jews, because as we know, Robert Satlov came up with a name, Khalid Abdul Wahab, but he was not considered to have saved, to have risked his life when he when he saved Annie Boukris and the other women. Do you have other?
I know very well the
candidates?
world of Satloff. You know, we worked together for a while, and what I am trying to say is, okay, let me present it this way. I did develop 40 testimonies at the USC Shoah Foundation, and then the name of the MENA collection, Middle East, North Africa. We have 40, and one of them is, for example, the ones of Judea, of Ruth Pearl, the mother of...
Yes, but these are contemporary, yeah. I mean, she was a Farhud survivor. But I mean, on this question of Arabs who saved Jews, can you add to this?
Yes, there is
can you add to...
2 or 3 ladies. Okay, Chaim, what was her name? I forgot her name. I can send you the names that we have.
Okay, and please do write your website address in the chat if people want to refer to it.
Easy.
Yeah.
We are the tree of life. We are
the tree of life. Okay.
Thank
you very much. Thank you.
I have to tell that not all the Arabs were against Jews or were anti-Semitic or used this song in Tunisia. For Jews in Tunisia used to live most of the time, I say most of the time, they used to live quite well with each other. My grandmother told me a lot of stories about friends, neighbors, Arab neighbors, that they find a way to ta'ayush, to live together.
Yeah.
To live together. I spoke in the Arabic world.
Yeah.
And this is the way. This is something, but Chasidei Umot Olam, from us we called it. You know, people, Arabs that save, Arabs who saved life of Jews in Yad Vashem. I think there are only one, the one that you mentioned, that is recognized in Yad Vashem.
He wasn't even recognized. He wasn't considered to have risked
and
his
also
life.
Today his family say that it wasn't like this.
Yes.
It's a different story. It's not what that, but only one, only one was mentioned, as you could say, that he saved Jewish lives during this period. And what is interesting about Hamli book, as I described from the Tunisian archive, that everyone, I could make it very longer, but there are a lot of propaganda or things that Arabs use to describe. Even Habib Bourguiba, his wife was a Jewish, the wife of, he was married to a Jewish lady, Habib Bourguiba. And some of the Jewish from Tunisia really like him. I think one of he also appointed in the 50s, the first Jewish minister was appointed as a Jewish minister in his government. It was interesting how they worked together in Tunisia during that period. But in the 30s, during the Second World War, the Jewish there didn't so much recognize that people from Tunisia, the Arabs, really liked them. As I told you before, the Arabs think that they look like they identify the Jewish as the colonists, as the France colonialism that they hate. I think this is also one of the reasons why they hate the Jews during that period.
Yeah, certainly, yeah. And it's I heard it or read somewhere that the more upper class Tunisians were much more philo-Semitic than the lower class ones.
Yes.
I think it was in Gez's account. Yeah. So very interesting. Okay, so lovely. Thank you, Jacqueline, for writing your website address there. And Veronique makes the point that she tried to get compensation for her mother's cousin because his grandparents were despoiled during World War II. He got compensation, which was shamefully low. That's very interesting. So those are Tunisian Jews who moved to France. We're not talking about Tunisian Israelis who received some form of compensation.
Veronica
Okay,
asked if Bourguiba was married to a Jewish woman. This is at least what my grandmother told me. At least in the
okay. And Danielle
50s,
said she was Christian.
at least in the
Yeah.
50s, he was married to a Jewish lady.
Okay. Or was she
I don't
Christian
know
and converted?
exactly if he was married in the 30s, but I could check.
Yeah.
I could try to check more
We have to
detail.
check that, I think. We have to check that. Okay, so if there aren't any more comments, I think we should bring this meeting to a close. I'd just
Someone
like
also
to
write something about
thank you. Yes, Veronique's. Oh yes,
a
sorry.
quick question,
Jonathan
Jonathan.
Raimond has a quick question. Okay, last question from Jonathan. Can you get him up?
I'm doing it, darling.
Yeah. We're just getting him up.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, Shaul. Hey, Lynn. Thank you. Lynn, as you know, I did a documentary called Journey from Tunisia, which you showed a few years ago in
I
London
remember.
about the memories of the Nazi occupation by my grandparents, great aunt and great uncle. And for folks who are interested, I'll put my email in the chat. If people want to see a copy of it, just reach out to me. My question is something that my grandfather had said in that interview, and they were from Gabes. Is that at some point after the labor camp, but I think before the end of the war, they were released from the labor camp, and he was actually allowed to open a small store selling stationery like pencils and note cards. And he has a story in the film about how a Nazi officer, Nazi soldier stole from his store, basically picked out a bunch of items and then didn't pay. And so my grandfather said he went to the head officer of the Nazis there in Gabes and said what happened, basically mentioned that this soldier stole. And the officer said, point him out to me. My grandfather pointed him out, and he was taken away to be punished. Not my grandfather, but the soldier who had stolen, which was very shocking, a very surprising anecdote that in this crazy world at the time, there was a little bit of justice that was served.
Yeah.
So I don't know if in your research you had heard of anything like that, but that was very, very interesting to hear.
Yeah, look, the problem with the Germans, they were in some places they hate Jews, of course, they kill Jews, of course, in Bizerta, in some of the labor camps. But you have to understand the situation. The Germans fight for their lives in Tunisia. Most of the Germans that were in Tunisia were soldiers that want to survive and to win the battle against the Allies, and not exactly to be focused about killing Jews. It was always, you have to understand, the Allies come from some directions. They come from the sea, they come from Algeria and Morocco, and they come also from the Libyan front. For them, it was very, very difficult not to be. They have to be focused about the battle, about the army, and not all the Germans, as you mentioned. Maybe not all the Germans were bad, but in the German army, there, as I already mentioned, there was the Einsatzgruppen, the death squads that tried to kill Jews in German, and also they were the ruling part and started to implement their plan.
Right. Okay. Thank you. But at least there were some honourable Germans around, which is good news. So thank you for clearing up the the question of who Bourguiba married. He married first a French Christian woman and then a Muslim woman. So no Jews around.
I will check again. I believe to my grandmother, I will check it.
Okay, yes, you check it. All right,
I know
lovely.
that he have some women. He don't have only one woman during his life, but at least in the 50s. And I could say that, but I know that after one of the pogroms in Tunisia during the 50s, he come and say they apologize and say that we will fight against the anti-Semitic and we fight against those people who try to hurt our Jewish community in Tunisia. They are Tunisian. He used a lot of words to explain that he appreciated the Tunisian Jewry, the Tunisian heritage of the Jewish in Tunisia. Very, very warm.
Yes, that's right. Unfortunately, it
thank you
didn't
so
last
much.
long, though, did it? It didn't last long, and everybody left. There are only about 1,000 Jews left in Tunisia today.
Yeah, today only 1,500 Jews already have been left.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shaul. It was absolutely fascinating. And thank you all for joining us. And we've got some very distinguished people here on the call, William and Matthias and Ephraim. Thank you for all your research and absolutely fascinating. Thank you. We enjoyed it thoroughly. So we continue the sort of Nazi theme in a way with our program because we've got a film at the end of June. This is an in-person film, if you happen to be in London, about Salonika during the war and how a group of Nazis came to move in with a group of Jews. It's actually based on a true story. Then we've got another in-person.
Sleeping with Nazis.
Yeah, Sleeping with the Nazis. That's right. That's on the 30th of June if you're in London. Another London event is on the 10th of June, and I will be talking to Linda Dangour about something completely different, about food and her journey from Iraq to London and other places in between. So that's it for the moment. There may be more events. Just please do look at the Harif website for an up-to-date program. So I think we'll stop